there, interwebs. I hope you're all doing well, and sorry that this is going to be shot kind of guerrilla style, but I just realized that there is an entire episode of Star Trek that just came out that I completely missed reviewing, and I need to jump on it. And that is the release of the premiere episode of the very short Trek series titled To Skin a Cat. So yeah, Paramount has apparently decided to release a couple of animated shorts to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Star Trek the Animated Series, which is, really, really great. Star Trek the Animated Series is definitely a Star Trek show that is, I think, the most underappreciated out of all of them, especially considering how important it was to allowing us to have Star Trek today. Star Trek the Animated Series existed in that time between, when Star Trek the original series was canceled in the 1960s and it coming back at the end of the 1970s with Star Trek the Motion Picture, sort of bolstered off of the success of Star Wars. And the animated series was something that kept Star Trek alive in both the minds of fans and executives as like a property that, could still have some juice in it. So arguably, without the animated series, we wouldn't have Star Trek today. And there are a lot of really cool gems and just weird aspects of the animated series that I really, really love. So I'm glad that it's getting some love and acknowledgement during this time. And even better, I really like this idea of doing shorts because they are bringing in a bunch of sort of older Star Trek actors and characters, like Neelix is going to be in an upcoming episode. Jonathan Frakes, he's willing to do anything Star Trek, but he's coming back for it. Doug Jones as well. And I hope that this is sort of proof of concept that you can do this with even more actors. Like, maybe we can't have a Star Trek Enterprise show with live action actors, but you can get Connor Trinneer, who is going to be in one of these shorts, back for an animated thing, and maybe do a continuation of Star Trek that way, or with actors who are a bit older, or maybe even do, as I've always wanted to do, audio dramas. Like, give me more Star Trek audio dramas. Again, my dream job, just put it out there, is to be a producer for Star Trek audio dramas. That would be my dream. And it's a great way to do legacy Star Trek characters without, stifling down the franchise with nostalgia stuff, and actually get these actors to do some cool stuff, even though they've aged possibly out of the parts. Anywho, my little random nonsense aside, let's actually talk about this first episode that they released called To Skin a Cat, which is very much meant to be like a 3-minute comedy sketch. It felt like a sort of SNL Star Trek sketch, and I think that is where the crux of my problem with this shorts began, because I'm going to be honest, while I did laugh at this a little bit, the more I think about it, the more I really just dislike where the humor of this short comes from. The joke of the piece is very much this captain uses idioms that offend different members of the crew, because, Star Trek ships are very, very diverse in terms of, like, there are fish people, there are cat people, things like this. And so the joke just is he uses weird idioms, and everyone just always gets offended when he uses the idioms.
We have bigger fish to fry.
What? You want to fry me?
Ensign, please, don't get your knickers in a twist.
How dare you?
And, there are a couple chuckles in there, like seeing a butt-faced person and, a screw person. Like, there's just some weird, like, idiom-related humor there that I found just kind of funny for the zaniness of it. But to me, it really didn't feel like this humor was very Star Trek. And I hate to be that person that says, oh, this isn't very Star Trek, but I think it gets to like the core of what I feel Star Trek should be in terms of how it's utilized as a property, because a lot of this humor very much felt like rooted in that anxiety. And I'm not saying that this is what the creators were saying, but it feels rooted in that same anxiety of like, oh, I'm going to say something that is going to offend somebody of a marginalized status. Like, yeah, I'm use the wrong pronouns for a trans person, they're gonna jump down my throat and attack me, or, I say something, PC culture gone amok.
Did you just move your desk here?
You're asking if I just move this big metal console onto the bridge?
It's just...
That's a very right-wing narrative. I don't think these people are falling into it, but it is kind of playing into that kind of trope that centers a certain perspective, a non-marginalized perspective, in the captain's chair, quite literally, for this short. As well as centering the short's foundation for humor around the anxiety and fear a privileged person may feel towards having to coexist with identities different from their own, funneled in this short through the perspective of the hierarchical captain position. And that really bothers me in Star Trek, because what Star Trek should be is a place where no one's getting offended because we're all sort of aware of everyone's, humanity, for lack of a better word. Personhood, I guess would be the better word for it. In the Star Trek world, technically, the stigmatized hierarchy shouldn't exist, and so there wouldn't be this fear, but just an everyday awareness that someone would have in respecting someone's personhood, regardless of who they are. And if they did fuck up in that, then they know they live in a space where someone would correct them, and they wouldn't feel any anxiety or fear about being corrected. Because in this world, everyone knows that we're here to just help each other grow rather than condemn people. And so to center like your main captain character is this guy who's like very unaware of his crew, very uncaring towards the diversity that's there, feels very, no, it just feels very strange as a Star Trek thing to put out, and a weird like piece of humor to use Star Trek as a property for. I mean, I look at something like Lower Decks, and a lot of what works for that show's particular humor, and why I think Star Trek Lower Decks is like very much understands how to use Star Trek as a franchise and as a storytelling mechanism, is there are so many moments in that series where you see where someone could like get upset about something or misunderstand something or feel bothered by something, but instead of going the normal like, oh, I'm bothered or upset by this, the characters like swerve and actually view it as a positive, hopeful thing.
I never stop believing in you, Purplehead. I love you. I'm in love with you.
I'm in love with you too, buddy. Let's go.
Okay, hey, there's your romance.
I think the epitome of this for me was in the season 1 finale of Lower Decks, where Rutherford lost his memory, and you see this moment where Tendi looks like she's going to be upset that Rutherford has lost his memory, but then Tendi takes the swerve and says, oh, this just means we get to become friends all over again.
Oh, your implant, it must have damaged your long-term memory. Do you remember me at all?
Well, no. But don't take it personally. I don't remember what I don't remember.
You know what this means, right? We get to become best friends all over again!
Okie dokie.
Like, that just joy in, like, you know, these things that we normally would see as dark, and just getting to, like, this appreciation of getting to know each other in a very fresh way that feels very distinct and different from, you know, the world that we live in today. And I think that's why Lower Decks really, that humor works so well, but still feels very Star Trek.
And there was this moment where he's like, Knick-Knack is like, I love you, I'm in love with you. And originally, Boimler's reaction was like, oh, all right, buddy, let's just keep doing the movie. And I was like, why is it weird that Boimler's reacting like that? It's not funny to me. It doesn't feel right. And I was like, oh, because Knick-Knack expressing love for him wouldn't be something Boimler would react like that to.
Yeah.
Like, I love you too, Knick-Knack, let's do it. Like, it's like, that's what feels good about, that's like the first season episode where whenever Rutherford's trying to quit his jobs and everybody keeps being like, you got to be true to yourself, you know? And that's like, it's comedic in a TV show that everybody would be so easy to fall in love and try things and be supportive of each other. And that's part of the irony of getting to do Star Trek. Like that's the comedy of Star Trek, is playing with your expectations of our lives, where everybody has opinions and wants to tell you what to do or who to be and how to be. And that like in Starfleet, it's like, nobody cares if you're dating a cat, or like all they care about is if you are being a good part of the crew, that you are like,
You're helping, you're carrying up the community.
Find is important, right? Like,
yeah,
that's the only thing you can get demerit points for. Everything else is like, is fine with everybody, and that's a good feeling. Like stories that are so accepting that it doesn't seem like a big deal. You know what I mean? Like,
and so this short just feels like it's ingrained in a perspective that is denying the diversity that Star Trek is built upon, and rooting itself in humor that I think misunderstands how to think about Star Trek and what it can do uniquely as a Star Trek property. So while I find this, you know, nominally funny here and there for some of the unexpected visuals that it has, overall, I didn't really like the humor, and I thought it was sort of a failure to use the Star Trekkiness that it is able to play within by being part of the actual franchise itself. And one thing I did like about the short, though, if I want to talk about some of the positives, is I really did like Ethan Peck specifically as Spock in this. Like, I love Leonard Nimoy so much. He is one of my favorite actors and people just generally. So it was a bit like it took me a second to be like, oh, that's Ethan Peck's voice, not Leonard Nimoy in the animated series style. But Ethan Peck like nailed it. I thought he did such a great job of being his own thing and yet evoking Leonard Nimoy in the animated series. Like, just he threaded that needle really well. And everyone in this was really, really good. Like, Pete Holmes was really funny as well in terms of his delivery, and Bonnie Gordon was in this as well. So, you know, the actors were killing it. So yeah, not a fan of this one, but I am willing to be very hopeful for the rest of this. I mean, they're bringing back my boy Connor Trenier, so, you know, use him well, because my boy Trip deserves better than he got at the end of Enterprise. So, yeah, excited to see what else we have coming for down the pipeline for these, but this first one for me was a little bit of a misfire. So, love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below.